My name is Maria Harrington. I work at the University of Central Florida, where I'm an assistant professor of digital media. My research interest is on immersive informal learning application design and development. I'd like to introduce the AR Perpetual Garden app. It's also available on Apple iTunes and Google Play stores. It was inspired by the traditional dioramas at the Carnegie Museum, both in the creation process and application. This paper may be of interest to researchers and practitioners alike. First, as a way to understand and generalize the critical design factors that we found are correlated with actual learning, as well as the process we use to create it. The process is an iterative design and development model that extends the user-centered design to incorporate the goals and activities of the learner in intrinsically motivated learning. So I call this the learner user experience design process, or the LUX process. Museum dioramas represent knowledge. These are knowledge artifacts that were designed and created to communicate science and information about the natural world to the public in informal ways. What we are looking at is a photograph of the Hall of Botany, where there are several different biomes, and each represent in content and detail and complexity models of the real world. These artifacts could then be used to educate and communicate information about the natural world to the public. Other examples of these knowledge artifacts are botanical prints or glass flowers and dioramas that are exhibited at other natural history museums. But the botanical prints are very interesting because they represent visual knowledge. In addition to field notes of naturalists and data recorded, we often find the illustrations. And this information, while beautiful, is really an artifact and document of observations of the natural world. And they incorporate information that can be used in education. However, with the botanical prints, they are two-dimensional, and there's a loss of information of 3 dimensions. The Harvard Museum of Natural History has created a collection, the Ware collection of glass flowers that incorporates the 3 dimensions of these plants. Additionally, they have cross-sections and magnified views, so scale becomes a dimension that we can play with. Taken together, we can think about the dioramas as the original virtual reality and extend it using our technology today. So let's look at traditional annotation methods of the dioramas of the past. They were annotated with facts, with signage and booklets, as well as interpretive narratives, usually in a face-to-face or person-to-person tour led by a docent or a curator, someone who could take the facts and put them into an organizational structure of concepts and then communicate it in a narrative. And so these were the attributes that we were looking to build upon, best practices of the past, and transfer that into the design of the augmented reality app. Additionally, working in the Powdermill Nature Reserve, there's an additional dimension of time. So there are seasons and dynamic interactions that can also be simulated in these immersive environments and communicated back to the public. At the nature reserve, sometimes the flowers would only bloom for a day or 2 and then disappear. So if you were not there, you didn't get to see it. But the idea was to create a perpetual garden that someone could always see and bring it back into the educational programming. How did we do this? There were 3 cycles of review in the design process to intentionally and deliberately increase the information fidelity, the accuracy, and the truth value, as well as the salience for learning for the public. And this 3-cycle process is highly iterative and collaborative. The first cycle deals with the scientists, the second one deals with the artists and the scientists working together, and the third is the programmers and the testing and the validating of the software from a usability standpoint, as well as the learning outcomes that could be measured. The first cycle deals with the factual review and validation and release. So we have the domain experts as the scientists, the ecologists, and the biologists. They gather the information and give it to the students, who then create the digital media artifacts and reference materials. Once this is vetted and approved and released by the domain experts who own the information and the quality of it, it is released to the artist and the scientist team to co-create these immersive objects, these knowledge artifacts. And this is a highly iterative process where errors are identified and refined, and then the objects are improved to reflect the information in the data. The third cycle deals with the software that's being created and usability. And in this process, we are integrating all of the assets, testing it for usability, measuring it for the learning outcomes. Again, it's a highly collaborative, iterative process that is intended to remove error in information. So we want to increase the information fidelity. So I referred to this as the high information fidelity standard and the salience necessary to make it enticing and beautiful for someone to care about or be motivated to learn. These knowledge artifacts are the result of this process. This is a photograph of the air perpetual garden in the Hall of Botany last summer. And what I love about this is the virtual springtime flowers cascade out of the traditional diorama, and they actually cover the entire gallery floor. So they transform it into this realistic and believable multi-sensory springtime woodland environment. You can hear the birds and hear the insects. You can get down on the floor and actually see all the details in the plants. Wherever you look, it is a woodland garden. So it really transforms this entire gallery into a forest. It also represents what an expert scientist could imagine because they have the knowledge to imagine this. But a naive or person in the public lacks that knowledge, so they can't possibly imagine it. This tool allows the information, the knowledge-infused, high information fidelity imagination of an expert in a domain to transfer that image and that knowledge and the smells, not the smells, but all that sensory information to a naive individual, and they get to experience it the way the expert does. This is an idea that does fascinate me about the design. So let's measure the impact on actual learning. We constructed a study to compare the augmented reality tool directly to a booklet, which was the traditional method. And we found that the AR app performed as well as the traditional. There was about 40% gain in either condition and about 9 minutes in either condition. So both resulted in learning, and the AR app performed as well as the traditional booklet, which I think is a success. In addition to that, there were all these other reported benefits. We had increased engagement and social interactions and evidence of embodiment and presence that perhaps enhances the use of this technology. So we have the evidence that there's learning and evidence that there is engagement and motivation. All right, what are the factors in that design that cause that learning? The actual learning, 40%, was statistically significantly and slightly positively correlated to the plant info, the facts, as well as the story. And this makes sense because in order to really learn, you do need access to the data, and the data has to be placed into context, which is the narrative, right? What was interesting is that the perceptions were different than the actual, and there were all these intercorrelations that were going on linked to the story. And this is an area open for more analysis and work, but the takeaway is that if you were building an immersive application for actual learning, then you need to have a way for that user, that learner, to access the facts and access the story. Broader impact means taking it out of the lab and actually deploying it on the digital distribution channels of iTunes and Google. Unfortunately now, it does work at home and in backyards. So parents, you might want to download this during COVID-19 and actually use it in your house or in your yard to bring the museum to home. It's, I think that we do need to get out there and distribute these products. So it's available. Please search for it and download it. And if you have any please feel free to email me at maria.harrington@ucf.edu. I hope to hear from you soon. Thank you. Bye.